blend of roses and wolfsbane clung to the air like a deliberate spell, an odd marriage of scents meant to honor both human tradition and the darker rites of the Lycan world. I sat tucked away at table 19, the farthest corner of the reception hall, watching champagne bubbles rise and burst inside a glass I hadn't touched. My pale blonde hair had been arranged to hide half my face, a fragile curtain, shielding me from the sidelong looks and murmured remarks that drifted my way like drifting ash. Did they really invite her? The whispers weren't meant for me yet. My Omega senses caught every word, an unwanted reminder that even heightened instincts couldn't earn me a place among my own kind. A packless Omega is like a moon cut loose from its sky, adrift, wrong, unanchored. And I had been alone ever since the Moon Valley clan cast me out 3 winters ago. 2 weeks, they'd said. Just 2 weeks is all it took for you to disturb our balance. My fingers moved to the cool metal resting at my throat, a small silver pendant, the last thing my grandmother Lyra pressed into my hand before she died. Strength doesn't always show its teeth. Lyra, she had whispered as she closed my fingers around the crescent pendant. Sometimes it hides in the quiet heartbeat between storms. I'd clung to those words through every closed door, every withdrawn invitation, every wary stare once people realized who I was. Except this one. Elin, my childhood friend, long before rank pulled us in opposite directions, had sent a handwritten note tucked inside her wedding invitation. I want you there. Please come. So I came wrapped in a pale blue dress that cost 2 months of pay from my job at the Human Library, one of the few places where no one cared what mark lay at the base of my neck. The bride and groom swayed through their first dance, moving as one, perfect harmony. A true mate bond, something I would never have. Omegas like me, the broken ones, weren't destined for mates. We were meant to serve, to tend, to soothe. Even those roles had been stripped from me after what happened with the pup. A ripple of silence moved through the hall, then spreading like a cold draft. The air thickened, heavy, reverent. I didn't even need to look up to know why. The scent struck first pine, wild mountain wind, and the sharp crackle of something electric, like the moment lightning chooses where to fall. The Alpha King of the Northwestern Territories had arrived. I kept my gaze on my plate. Royals didn't bother with lone Omegas. They existed in a world far removed from mine alliances, dominance, bloodlines. I belong to none of it. You're in my seat. The deep voice behind me sent a tremor down my spine before I could swallow it. My Omega instincts answered first, recognizing authority while my human side bristled at the audacity. I looked up, caught between defiance and the instinct to bow my head. And then I met eyes green, fierce, the color of forests, where I sometimes ran under full moons, when loneliness clawed too deep. Kyle Draven Lycan, King of the Northwest, stood beside my forgotten table, studying me with an expression I couldn't decipher. His dark hair was brushed away from a sharply sculpted face, the only imperfection, a thin scar marking a path from his temple to the corner of his mouth. His black suit moved like living shadow, far too fine for any ordinary tailor. There must be some mistake, I managed, voice barely above breath. This is table 19. A flicker crossed his gaze, surprised, maybe curiosity. I'm fully aware of which table this is. His eyes slid across the empty chairs around me. The real question is, why are you sitting here alone? Before I could answer, noise erupted near the main entrance. A cluster of Lycans in military dress, northern insignias gleaming, argued with the bride's father, Rowan. Even from here I could see the tension in their stances, the aggression humming beneath their composure. Right on schedule, Kyle muttered, and without warning he pulled out the chair beside me and sat. Gasps echoed from nearby tables. He leaned closer, close enough for me to feel the unnatural heat alpha blood carried. "What's your name, Lyra?" I replied quietly. "Lyra Snow." Recognition flared in his eyes, there and gone in an instant. The Moon Valley outcast. The words hit like a blade. I moved to stand the last shreds of dignity all I had, but Kyle caught my hand holding me in place. That wasn't an accusation, Lyra Snow. His voice dropped into a low rumble, the kind that brushed against something instinctive and ancient inside me. It was only a statement. The northern envoys were settling into their seats now, their gazes sweeping the hall until they landed on the Lycan King sitting beside me. Their smirks sharpened as if they'd just won a hand in a rigged game. "I find myself in need of assistance," Cale Draven said, turning his full attention back to me, his hands still wrapped firmly around mine. "Politics are shifting tonight, and I need someone beside me who isn't angling for power." "I don't understand," I whispered. "It's simple." His thumb traced slow rhythmic patterns along my wrist, right over the frantic beat of my pulse. "For the rest of this wedding, I need you to act like you're with me. With you," the words escaped in a breath I couldn't control. His mouth lifted, softening the hard symmetry of his face. "As my companion. My date, if you want the human version." The absurdity hit me like a slap. The strongest alpha in the Northwest asking a discarded omega to pretend she mattered. It had to be some twisted joke, another reminder of where I stood in the hierarchy. Why I yanked my hand free, ignoring the sudden cold rushing across my skin. "Why ask me?" He studied me with unsettling focus, as if peeling back every layer I tried to hide behind. "Because every wolf in this room wants something from me: land, alliances, leverage, influence. Every wolf except you, Lyra Snow." He leaned in, voice dropping even lower. "You look at me and see a complication, not a prize. Do you know how rare that is?" Before I could form a response, the music shifted into a slow, pulsing melody meant for intimate dances. Kyle rose, extending his hand. His expression made it clear this wasn't truly optional. "Dance with me," he said. "While we dance, I'll tell you exactly what's happening and what I need from you." I hesitated, painfully aware of the eyes burning into our backs, of the whispers spreading like wildfire. Refusing him would cause a scene. Accepting meant stepping into a world full of claws and teeth I'd never learned to navigate. Still, I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine with a gentleness that contradicted every brutal story I'd ever heard about him. He guided me onto the dance floor, couples pulling away as though an unseen tide moved around us. My heartbeat thundered loud and uneven. "Breathe," he murmured, turning me to face him. His hand settled at my waist with precise, careful placement. "You're doing fine. I don't know how to dance like this," I whispered. "Then follow my lead." He drew me into the first steps. "That's all I need from you tonight. Tomorrow," he continued, "you can go back to your life as if none of this happened." But his tone made it clear he didn't believe that, and somewhere deep inside neither did I. I lifted my eyes to his, searching for the cruelty I expected, the manipulation, the mockery. I found none of it. What I saw instead was strategy, and something else. Something that felt almost like recognition, as if he'd been searching for a piece of a puzzle and had just found it in me. "Tell me why," I said quietly, pulling courage from the strange closeness between us. "Tell me why you're really doing this." His gaze shifted past my shoulder. "Because in 3 days, the Northern Pacts plan to challenge my crown. And they're watching now, weighing my strength." His eyes locked onto mine again. An unmated king is easy to target. The weight of his confession hit me like a cold wind. "For tonight," he said softly, "you are both my shield and my flaw. How you choose to stand beside me may shape the future of every pack in the Northwest." The words settled over me like heavy armor. I had been known a ghost and outcast, and suddenly I held influence I never asked for. "But why me?" I whispered. "Out of everyone here, why? Choose the one with no rank, no allies, no power." His hand tightened at my waist, drawing me the smallest bit closer. "Maybe because you're the only one with nothing left to gamble," he said. Then quieter. "Or maybe fate's playing a joke on both of us." As we turned with the music, I spotted Eileen across the room, standing beside Jace. Her eyes were wide, shock mixed with something that looked dangerously like hope. Beyond her, the northern delegates tracked every movement. Kyle and I made their stares sharp as blades. What had I walked into? What deadly game was this king playing, and why had he chosen me as his piece? "Stop thinking so hard," Kale murmured, amusement threading through his voice. "For now, just dance with me, Lyra. Tomorrow we'll deal with the war, the politics, and everything waiting in the dark." So I did. I danced with the Lycan King while the moon climbed higher outside, silver light spilling through the tall windows, washing over us, as if claiming us both. And for the first time in years, no one looked through me like I didn't exist. They looked at me, at the girl in the arms of the most powerful alpha in the territories, and they wondered, just as I did, what it meant. The song faded, but Kael's hand stayed at the small of my back, a steady warmth, guiding me through the crowded hall. Whispers trailed after us, like drifting ash, speculation, shock, disbelief. The king with an omega. And not just any omega, the Moon Valley disgrace. It had to be politics or some twisted joke. I kept my gaze forward, chin lifted in a posture of confidence I didn't truly possess. Inside, uncertainty thudded through me. This close, I could sense nuances in Kyle's scent I hadn't noticed before. Beneath the pine and raw dominance lay something darker, like the scent of rain hitting deep soil, hinting at depths hidden far beneath the surface. He led me toward a quiet alcove by one of the towering windows where moonlight pooled across the floor like silver water. We stood far enough from prying ears, but still in full view of anyone looking for a reason to gossip. "You're shaking," he noted, voice dipped low. "Wouldn't you?" I muttered. I went from outcast to standing beside the most powerful alpha in the territories in under an hour. I folded my arms around myself. Everyone is staring. Let them. He reached up, paused for the briefest moment, then brushed a strand of my pale hair behind my ear. The simple touch rooted me to the spot. "They're supposed to stare," he added quietly. "You still haven't told me what any of this actually means," I reminded him, forcing my voice to steady despite the flutter spreading in my chest. "Or what you expect me to do." Kael's expression hardened as his gaze shifted across the room. I followed it and spotted 3 members of the northern delegation, deep in conversation with Rowan, the groom's father Abeda, with strong influence in the trade circuits. "The North has never lacked ambition," Kael said eventually. "For generations they've believed their bloodline should rule. When I took the crown 5 years ago, it didn't sit well with many." "I remember," I said softly. Everyone did. The battles had torn through both territories, the death toll staggering, before Kael Draven stood victorious, crowned king in a river of blood. "What you don't know," he continued, "is that they've been building their strength ever since alliances, supplies and pieces most wolves don't notice being moved." "What pieces?" I asked. His eyes came back to mine, sharp and unyielding. Weapons, loyalties, and something far worse. Old magic. A chill rippled through me, cutting deeper than any draft. Old magic was forbidden for a reason. Wild, corrupting, power that devoured both wielder and victim. Power that left scars no healing could touch. 3 nights from now, he said, under the blood moon, they'll attempt their strike. His voice darkened. "They've secured an artifact, a moonstone dagger, that can sever an alpha's connection to their wolf." Horror slammed through me. Severing a Lycan from their wolf was beyond death. It was spiritual mutilation, leaving behind a hollow, broken shell. A cruelty no sane wolf would dare unleash. "How do you know this?" I whispered. "I have sources," he said, jaw tightening. "But what I don't know is who they've sent in as their assassin. It could be anyone in this room." I scanned the guests, their smiles suddenly felt like masks hiding blades. "And my part in your plan?" I asked. "Distraction," he said plainly. The North expects me to arrive with guards with dominance. They're searching for cracks, signs of strain. He gestured lightly between us. They do not expect this. A rejected Omega on your arm, I said flatly. Something flickered in his gaze, not pity, not remorse, just acknowledgement of the brutal truth. They'll underestimate me because of you, he said. Assume I'm preoccupied, off balance. And while they're busy convincing themselves my people, the wardens will be hunting down the dagger. So I'm a decoy, I muttered, bitterness curling inside my chest. Even here, even now, I was being used for what I lacked. A partner, he corrected. One no one will suspect. Before I could respond, a tall woman with rich auburn hair glided toward us. Her steps were fluid with the effortless poise of a born beta. She wore a deep green gown that made her whiskey-colored eyes shine, and though her smile was warm, something calculating lingered beneath it. Your Majesty, she purred, completely ignoring my presence. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten our dance. Celine Hart's voice was honeyed and sharp all at once. Cale Draven's expression didn't shift. Celine, my plans changed tonight. Her gaze finally flicked toward me, a quick slicing glance that managed to judge and dismiss me in the same breath. I see. Perhaps another time then. She stepped closer to Kael, so subtly it almost looked accidental. Her perfume expensive, calculated, a blend designed to tempt Rose between them like smoke. The northern delegation seems very interested in your newest companions, she added with a flawless, pleasant smile. As they should be. Kael's arm slipped around my waist, drawing me against his side with casual possession that sent my pulse into a wild stutter. Lyra, he said, this is Celine Hart of the Silver Lake Pack. Celine Lyra Snow. Celine's polite smile didn't falter, but her scent shifted sharp with irritation, quickly smothered. Snow. I don't recognize the pack. I don't have a pack, I replied quietly. Her brows lifted. How unusual. His Majesty rarely entertains. She paused delicately, solitary individuals. Before I could bite back a comment, Kael spoke smoothly. Independence gives people a vantage point others miss. They're not tangled in politics. How philosophical of you. Celine's smile remained perfectly practiced. Well, I won't intrude on your perspective collecting. She pivoted to leave, then looked at me once more. A word of caution, dear. The king's attention is like the moon, beautiful, bright, but never permanent. Don't confuse a full moon for something that lasts. She walked off before either of us responded, the warning lingering between us like ice on a window pane. Charming friend, I muttered. Celine is the daughter of my lead diplomat, Kael replied. She's been angling for a political bond since the day I took power. His thumb traced lightly along my side where his hand rested. She's also high on my list of potential infiltrators. My eyebrows shot up. And you just told her exactly who I am. I told her exactly what I wanted her to believe, he corrected calmly. Now come. We need to be seen. For the next hour, Kael guided me through a carefully choreographed circuit of the hall. We spoke with pack leaders, merchants, seasoned warriors, each exchange a dance of subtle dominance and information gathering. He introduced me simply as Lyra, offering no explanation, no apology. His hand never left me, my waist, my arm, the curve of my back. To anyone watching, we looked like lovers, sharing quiet whispers and stolen smiles. In reality, every murmur was Kael identifying a person's alliances. Every soft smile masking deeper analysis. Strangely, I slipped into the role with ease. Maybe because it let me be someone other than the Omega no one wanted. For this moment, I was someone confident enough to stand next to a king. As the evening stretched on, I began noticing patterns. Some delegates stiffened when we approached. Others watched us too closely, their interest hidden, poorly behind casual gestures. I leaned in close enough that my lips brushed his skin, appearing intimate but speaking low. "The man by the east entrance," I murmured. "Black suit, silver wolf head cufflinks. He's been tracking us since we crossed the room." Cale didn't look, but I felt his attention click into place. "Corvin Slate," he murmured. "Northern General. Good catch." His breath warmed the side of my face. "What else have you seen?" The approval in his tone ignited something in me, a spark I hadn't felt in years. No one had valued my instincts for so long. "The bride's cousin," I whispered. "The woman in the purple dress. She's met with Northern delegates in the hallway. Always brief. Never more than half a minute." A flicker of surprise crossed Cale's face, gone as quickly as it came. "You're sure?" "Yes," I said. 3 separate meetings. 3 different Northerners?" His hand tightened slightly at my waist. "That's unexpected. Mara has never shown any Northern affiliation. She also hasn't taken a sip of her champagne, even though she's been carrying a glass like a prop," I murmured. "And she keeps checking the eastern sky as if she's waiting for the moon to hit some exact point." Cale studied me with a new piercing intensity. "You catch far more than people give you credit for, especially for someone shoved at a forgotten table. When no one pays attention to you, it's easy to pay attention to everything else." I shrugged, uncomfortable beneath his gaze. "It's observation, not power. Information is power. Lyra Snow." He paused, something shifting behind his expression. "I'm starting to believe fate really did shove our paths together tonight." Before I could ask what he meant, a disturbance near the main entrance rippled through the hall. A tall man with iron-threaded black hair strode in, flanked by 4 Lycans with rigid, soldier-like stances. Their presence drained the warmth from the air. Power radiated off the newcomer like heat off burning coals, unmistakably, an alpha at his peak. "Varric Thorn Kyle," said, his voice sharpening. "Alpha of the Northern Territories." He wasn't expected to show his face tonight. Varric's frosted blue eyes swept across the hall until they locked onto us. A slow, predatory smile unfurled across his face as he cut a direct path toward where we stood. "Whatever happens next," Cale said under his breath, suddenly urgent trust. "Nothing," he says. "And don't reveal anything about yourself. Varric can sense lies and twist emotions, especially fear." "Why would he even care about me?" I whispered, panic scraping at my chest. Kyle turned fully toward me, lifting a hand to my cheek in a gesture so tender it bordered on intimate. To anyone watching, we appeared like lovers sharing a moment. But his eyes were razor sharp. "Because, Lyra, you're now the most dangerous variable in this room to his plans." His thumb brushed across my lower lip, sending a shiver down my spine. "And I need you to keep being dangerous." Varric Thorn reached us then, smile still fixed but never reaching the glacier gleam of his eyes. "Your Majesty," he said smoothly, "what an unexpected delight. I don't recall receiving word you'd be at this humble affair." Varric Kale replied coolly. His hand slipped from my face but remained firm at my waist. Last-minute decision. Even kings deserve a night of celebration. Varric's attention slid to me, his scrutiny slithering under my skin like cold water. Hunger and calculation burned behind his polite facade. "And who?" he asked softly. "Is this enchanting creature?" Though something in his tone told me he already knew. "Lyra Snow," Cale said simply. Varric extended his hand. "A pleasure, Miss Snow." Etiquette demanded I accept, but every instinct screamed no. Still declining would cause a scene we couldn't afford. I placed my hand in his, bracing for a simple shake. Instead, he lifted my fingers to his lips. A brush of contact, soft, invasive wrong. A wave of sensation surged through me, like hands rifling through hidden drawers, searching for secrets. "Interesting," he murmured against my knuckles. "Very interesting indeed." I snatched my hand away, fighting to keep my face neutral, despite the lingering cold crawling up my arm. At my side, Kyle went rigid, a shift so slight most wouldn't notice, but it radiated barely contained fury. I wasn't aware the Moon Valley Pack produced omegas of such quality, Varric continued, voice dripping provocation. Though from what I hear, they found your specific qualities lacking. Isn't that right, Miss Snow? How did he know? The question flashed across my face and his smile widened, predatory. I make it my business to understand the company my fellow alphas keep, he said. His gaze flicked between us, especially when that company is so unexpected. The tension between the two alphas crackled volatile electric, like the moment right before lightning tears open the sky. I stood perfectly still beside Kyle, painfully aware I was witnessing the kind of territorial standoff few ever survived seeing. I understand congratulations are in order, Varric said, his tone deceptively light. Your eastern territories seem unusually productive this season. Quite a feat given the drought. It sounded like polite chatter, but the subtext was razor sharp. I'm watching your resources, your strength, your weakness. Good leadership adapts to challenges, Kyle replied evenly. Something the northern clans might take to heart. Varric Thorn kept that pleasant smile on his face, though a small twitch pulsed at the edge of his jaw. Indeed, adaptation keeps a kingdom alive. His eyes slid back to me. And some adaptations are more surprising than others. Before Kale Draven could answer, the wedding coordinator announced the cake ceremony. The shift in attention gave us a brief escape. We shouldn't keep the happy couple waiting, Kyle said, tone final. Enjoy the celebration, Varric. We turned to leave, but Varric's voice chased after us, low and razor-edged. 3 nights, Black Claw. The moon doesn't wait. Kyle's hands stiffened against my back as he led me through the crowd toward the reception hall. His face stayed perfectly composed, but his scent shifted, rage threading with calculation. He knows about the dagger, I whispered, keeping my expression locked in neutrality, fully aware of the eyes still tracking us. Of course he does, it's his scheme. Kale barely moved his lips. What matters is how much he knows about you. The cake ritual blended human and Lycan customs, sweet cake followed by a shared cup of dark wine-thick liquid meant to symbolize the joining of bloodlines. Watching them stirred a heaviness in my chest, a sharp reminder of traditions I would never be part of. Don't! Kale's murmur was almost lost under the music. Don't what? Don't drift into whatever darkness just crossed your mind. His fingers slid between mine in intimate, grounding touch. I need you here. The soft command irritated me enough to snap me out of my thoughts. I'm not one of your subjects, Your Majesty. Surprise flickered in his gaze, followed by a ghost of amusement. No, you're not. Which is exactly why I need you. The rest of the reception blurred into careful choreography. 2 more dances. Sharing dessert from the same plate. Playing our roles with flawless ease. To everyone else, we looked like a king and the woman he'd chosen for the night. Only I felt the tension under his calm exterior. Only I noticed how he tracked each northern envoy with a predator's precision. Only I heard the subtle changes in his breath when certain names surfaced. Fear slowly morphed into a strange electric alertness. It felt intoxicating to have purpose again to matter. When the moon reached its highest point, Kyle guided me onto a secluded balcony overlooking the gardens. Cool night air wrapped around me. Moonlight turned the carefully manicured grounds into something feral and ancient. You handled yourself well tonight, he said quietly. His guard had finally slipped. Better than I expected. High praise from a king. I forced myself not to react to the warmth his approval stirred. So what happens now? Kyle watched the movements below. Now the real work begins. I have 3 days to find that dagger and break Varric's network before the blood moon rises. And my involvement ends tonight, I said, stating what felt obvious, ignoring how the words stung. He turned toward me, his expression unreadable. Not exactly. A chill crept beneath my skin. What does that mean? It means, Lyra Snow, that you were seen at my side tonight. You're marked." His tone was calm, almost clinical. "The North knows your face, your name. If you walk back into your old life tomorrow, you'll be exposed an easy loose end. They'll want to cut." The realization slammed into me. So helping you made me a target. My voice spiked before I caught myself. "I didn't ask for any of this." "No, you didn't." For the first time, regret bled into his voice. "But destiny doesn't exactly check our schedules before throwing lightning at our lives." "Destiny didn't do this." I shot back, anger cracking through the composure I'd fought to maintain. "You did. You dragged me into your war without warning me. Would you have said yes if I had warned you?" "Of course not." "Exactly." He stepped in, crowding the small balcony with sheer alpha intensity. "And now the North believes you matter to me, enough to threaten or use." "But I don't." I said the truth, stinging. "This is all just an act." Something flickered across his eyes. Quick, unreadable, unsettling. "Is it?" Before I could answer, the balcony door swung open, spilling warmth and music into the cold night. Aileen stood framed in the doorway, wedding gown, shimmering under the moonlight, her face drawn tight with nerves and purpose. "Your Majesty," she said, dipping her head. "My apologies," but her glance flicked to me, then back to Kael Draven. "There's a matter requiring your attention." Kael's posture shifted instantly. Whatever vulnerability had surfaced between us vanished beneath the steel of a king. "What kind of matter?" "The northern delegates," Elin whispered, even though the music drowned us out. "They're speaking with Rowan about securing passage through the eastern valleys, with very precise timing. The eastern valleys, the narrow throat between northern lands and Kael Draven's core territories. Passage during the blood moon was a tactical dagger pointed straight at him. "I see." His expression stayed composed, but calculation simmered beneath it. "Thank you for alerting me, Beta Elin." She nodded, then faced me. Her gaze softened. "Lyra, I'm truly glad you came. We have so much to reconnect about." "Another time," I said with a small smile. After she left, Kael fell silent, staring out at the dark horizon. When he finally spoke, urgency sharpened every word. "Things are moving faster than expected. We need to leave." "Leave?" I looked back at the lively reception hall, still glowing, still dancing. His tone allowed no argument. "My wardens already have transport prepared. We'll slip out through the gardens quietly." The full reality crashed over me. This wasn't one night of pretending. This was a threat big enough to pull me out of my life entirely. My tiny apartment in the human district. My job shelving books. My carefully built solitude. All of it suddenly felt fragile, breakable. "I can't just vanish," I argued, panic edging my voice. "I have a job, a schedule, a life." "I'll have every loose end handled," he cut in. "But right now your safety comes first. My safety." I repeated the words flatly. "A danger I wouldn't be in if you hadn't dragged me into this." "That's true." To my shock, he didn't deny it. "And when this is over, I will make things right. But at this moment, we need to move." Part of me wanted to walk straight back to the crowded dance floor, pretend the night was still normal. But reason clawed through the chaos. I'd been seen with the king closely enough to matter. Too closely, which meant I was already marked. "Fine," I said at last, anger collapsing into tired resignation. "But I want your word when your 3 days are up, when this crisis passes. My life is mine again." No royal strings. Something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation. Conflict. "You have my word. You'll be free to choose your own path once the threat is gone." It wasn't exactly what I asked for. But from a man who lived his life commanding entire kingdoms, it was likely the closest thing to a promise I would ever get. Kael Draven guided me down a narrow stone stairway, spiraling from the balcony into the gardens below. Moonlight clung to the roses and night-blooming flowers, their pale petals glowing like scattered embers in the dark. We slipped through the hedge pathways without a sound, careful not to disturb the couples hiding in the shadows. At the far edge of the gardens, a black SUV waited, with its engine humming low. A broad-shouldered warrior stood beside it, posture-sharp attention hunting through every corner of the night. Raylan Kale said with a short nod, "Any trouble? None." "Your Majesty?" Rylan replied, his eyes passing over me without emotion. "The diversion vehicles are set." "Good. We take the forest road." Rylan opened the back door and Kael's hand brushed the small of my back as he ushered me inside. The interior was sleek, armored, quiet. The tinted windows reflected only the faintest hints of passing light. Kael slid in beside me while Rylan took the wheel. As the SUV rolled away from the venue, the reception lights faded behind us, swallowed by the trees. Only then did the full weight of everything hit me. In a single night, I'd gone from invisible to sitting beside the most powerful alpha alive, now being rushed into the dark like a classified asset. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice somehow too soft in the still cabin. "Somewhere secure," Kael said, watching the forest blur past. "Somewhere Varric Thorn's scouts won't think to search." "And where is that?" He turned toward me, green eyes catching the thin slice of moonlight. "A place no one would expect me to bring an Omega, especially one like you." He let the silence stretch. "The Royal Sanctuary at Black Mountain," he said at last. I stared at him. Black Mountain. The ancestral heart of the Lycan Kings. Sacred. Forbidden. Untouched for generations. "No Omega has walked those halls in over a century," Kael added quietly. "Why would you take me there?" I whispered, genuine confusion, threading with something almost like fear. Kael studied me with a focus that felt surgical. "Because, Lyra Snow, I don't believe this night was random chance. You're connected to more than politics. What does that even mean?" Instead of answering, he reached toward me. His fingers brushed the silver crescent pendant at my throat. Lyra's last gift. "Where did you get this?" I grabbed it protectively, shielding it from him. "My grandmother gave it to me, before she passed." "Why?" he asked, voice dropping. His expression sharpened when I didn't answer quickly enough. "Because that crescent crafted from that specific silver belongs to one bloodline only. The lunar priestesses of Black Mountain. Thought to be extinct." My grip tightened. The metal suddenly felt heavier, colder, stranger. "That's impossible. My grandmother was just my grandmother, a healer in the human districts. A healer who gave you a royal relic," Kael said, and whispered things about strength hidden in quiet souls. Old memories stirred Lyra's bedtime stories of silver-furred wolves, dancing with moonlight, of women who could hear the sky breathe. I'd written them off as folklore. That proves nothing. I argued, but doubt was already cracking through my certainty. "Half the packs tell stories about priestesses." "Not with the accuracy your grandmother carried," he countered. "And not with pendants forged from Black Mountain's core silver that reacts only to bloodline." The crescent warmed against my skin, or maybe it was my pulse, my fear, my disbelief. "If what you're implying were true," I said, slowly, "why would Moon Valley reject me? Why would I grow up alone, packless, if I carried something rare? Because they didn't know." Kael answered, his voice low and unwavering. "Or worse, they sensed something in you and mistook potential for weakness." The SUV veered onto a narrow road, climbing deep into the forest, the world around us swallowed by towering pines. Through the dark glass, I saw Black Mountain rising in the distance, its massive silhouette cutting into the star-scattered sky, the summit lost in moonlit clouds like a crown forged from shadow. even if there's truth in what you're saying. I managed to trying to sort through my scattered thoughts. What does any of this have to do with your war with the Northern Pax, with Varric Thorn's plan? Everything, Kyle Draven said. A hard darkness crossed his features. The weapon they stole, the Moonstone Dagger, was never forged for violence. Lunar priestesses created it for spiritual connection, not severing wolves from their souls. And according to the oldest records, only someone with priestess blood can cancel out its power. The realization hit me so hard I felt the air leave my lungs. This wasn't just politics. This wasn't about distraction. If Kale was right, I was tied to something ancient, something I'd never believed was real. So when you approached me tonight at the wedding, I said, feeling everything lock into place. It wasn't to make a scene or play at affection. You recognized my pendant. You knew or guessed what I might be. I suspected, he corrected quietly. The second I saw that crescent, I knew it was possible. But I needed certainty before telling you anything. My anger flared hot and sharp. So you manipulated me, used me. I protected you. Kyle shot back, his voice hardening. If I'd laid out the truth from the start, would you have believed me? Or would you have chalked me up as unhinged and vanished into that perfectly constructed life you hide behind? I hated how accurate that was. Even now, with every strange piece aligning, it still felt impossible. You had no right, I said each word like a blade, to make that choice for me. To my shock, Kyle dipped his head slightly. An acknowledgement few ever received from a king. You're right. I didn't. But with the blood moon closing in and thousands of lives at stake, I acted the way I had to. The SUV banked around a tight curve only for the road ahead to vanish behind the massive form of a fallen tree. Reyes braked instantly, stopping several yards short. Stay inside, Kyle ordered, his entire body going alert. He gave Reyes a single look, one loaded with silent meaning. Sir, protocol says, Reyes began. I know protocol. Kyle cut him off. But if this is what I think, I need to see it myself. Before I could ask, he was already out of the SUV, moving like a predator, slipping into its natural skin. Even without shifting, everything about him radiated, wolf-controlled, lethal, listening to things I couldn't hear. What's happening? I whispered to Rylan, who hadn't taken his hand off the hidden weapon at his side. Trap, he said bluntly. Or a warning. Either possibility sent chills crawling up my spine. I watched Kyle circle the fallen trunk, studying something on the far side. The forest felt unnaturally quiet, no birds, no insects, like the entire world was holding its breath. Then Kyle froze. His head snapped up, and he ran. Go, he roared. Now Reyes slammed the SUV into reverse just as the first arrow sliced out of the trees, burying itself in the trunk where Kale had been standing seconds earlier. Another arrow hit, and another, a deadly storm from the dark woods. Kyle yanked the door open, throwing himself inside as Reyes executed a perfect spinning reverse turn, sending us racing back down the mountain road. An arrow smashed against the windshield, cracking the bulletproof glass in a violent spiderweb, but failing to pierce through. Northern scouts, Kyle growled, pulling out his phone. They've been following us since the wedding. How I gasped, my whole body shaking. We were so careful. The pendant, he said, his tone clipped, focused. It carries properties only trained scouts can sense. I should have anticipated that. Guilt slammed into me. The one thing I treasured most, Lyra's last gift, was now endangering us. But how could I have known? Kyle didn't pause, didn't breathe. He spoke rapidly into the phone, his voice all command, no hesitation. Kyle Draven fired off rapid commands in a coded dialect I didn't recognize, ending the call with a sharp exhale before shifting his attention back to the chaos closing in on us. We can't use the main road to the sanctuary anymore, he said. They'll have watchers on every mile. There's the Eastern Trail. Rylan suggested, handling the winding mountain road with the calm precision of a seasoned warrior. Rough terrain, but the SUV will manage. Too obvious. Kyle's gaze locked onto mine in the dim cabin. We need to split. They're tracking the pendant, which means they're tracking Lyra. My stomach folded in on itself. You want to use me as bait? No. His denial was immediate. Absolute. I want to use the pendant as a decoy while we take an alternate route. Realization hit like a cold blade. You want me to give up Lyra's pendant? It wasn't really a question. Only temporarily, he said. One of the wardens will take it the opposite direction. It'll buy us time and pull their scouts off our trail. The logic was undeniable, but it didn't soften the jab in my chest. That pendant was the last piece of the woman who raised me. Handing it over felt like chiseling off part of myself. Kyle saw it in my face. I wouldn't ask unless it was the only option, he said, his voice gentler than it had ever been. And I swear on my honor as king, you'll get it back. A king's oath. Unbreakable. Binding. Dangerous if dishonored. My hands shook as I reached behind my neck, unfastening the chain. The silver crescent shimmered faintly as I lifted it off, small, delicate, impossibly precious. I held it out. Kyle's fingers brushed mine as he took it, and heat sparked across my skin. Thank you, he murmured. The words were simple, though, but carried real weight. This protects both of us. Rylan merged back onto a wider road, slowing to a normal speed to avoid attention. Kyle made another call, arranging for a warden to intercept us and take the pendant. When he hung up, I asked, "What now?" "Now we take the path they'll never consider." His tone made my pulse thicken. "There's an old trail through the western forest," he continued. "Not on any maps. Known only to the royal bloodline. It leads to a hidden entrance to the sanctuary." But I said, reading him easily now, "It's not reachable by car." A faint smirk ghosted across his mouth. "It isn't. So hiking, in the middle of the night, through uncharted forest, while northern assassins hunted us. Wonderful." "How far?" I asked. 20 minutes by car," Rylan replied. "Then, about 2 hours on foot. 2 hours. In a formal gown, in shoes that were basically torture devices." A borderline hysterical laugh bubbled in my chest, but I shoved it down. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry had been seeing Ellen again and facing old wounds. Now I was dodging scouts, losing heirlooms, and maybe carrying a dormant priestess bloodline no one knew existed. Silence settled over the SUV, thick and heavy. Kyle finally broke it. "There's something else you should understand about the sanctuary." His tone snapped my attention to him instantly. "What about it?" "It's more than a fortress," he said quietly. "It sits on a convergence point. Ancient magic. Old power." He paused before adding, "The barrier between the physical world and the spirit realm is thin there, especially for those with certain sensitivities. Like lunar priestesses, I guessed." He nodded. "If you really carry their blood, you may experience things others can't. Visions, spirit presence, a heightened connection to your wolf." A lump formed in my throat. That last part hit hardest. My wolf, the fractured voice inside me, quiet when she should have been, loud, unstable when she should have been steady, had always been my greatest source of shame. Could that change? Could I change? "I've never felt anything like that before," I said. Carefully honest. "You've never been to Black Mountain," Kale answered. "The sanctuary magnifies dormant gifts. It's why kings dwell there. It strengthens everything a wolf is." Before I could respond, Rylan slowed the vehicle, turning off the paved road onto a nearly invisible dirt path swallowed by dense forest. "We're here," he said quietly. "This is as far as we can drive." Kyle Draven stepped out of the SUV and turned toward me, the forest swallowing the vehicle's headlights. "Are you ready?" The question held more weight than the miles ahead of us. Was I ready to step into whatever this new reality demanded of me, where Lyra Snow wasn't just some forgotten Omega shelving books in the human district, but someone tangled in ancient bloodlines, hunted by northern assassins carrying a pendant that could shift the balance of power. Of course, I wasn't ready. But running backward wasn't an option anymore. As ready as I can be, I answered. Kale studied me, searching for hesitation, fear, maybe weakness. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him. He gave one short nod, firm and decisive. Then we move. Cold night air rushed into my lungs as we stepped away from the SUV. The forest around us thrummed with life, earth sap, and the restless pulse of unseen creatures moving among the trees. My wolf stirred, uneasy but alert. Kyle spoke briefly with Rylan, who would take the decoy route with reinforcements. When the SUV slipped out of sight, its engine fading into silence, we were suddenly alone. Just the King of the West, and the maybe priestess who never saw this coming. "Stay close," Kyle said. He led me toward a narrow crease between two enormous oaks. "The trail doesn't reveal itself unless you already know it's here." As we stepped between the trunks, something invisible brushed against my skin, a shift in pressure, like crossing into another temperature entirely. A silent threshold. My spine tingled. This wasn't normal forest. Whatever waited deeper inside Black Mountain, I knew instinctively it would mark me forever. The path itself was little more than a phantom, a thread of disturbed leaves that seemed to vanish with each step. Kyle navigated without hesitation, reading the land through clues I couldn't decipher, the tilt of a mossy stone, a crooked limb, the pattern of shadows on bark. I followed closely, grateful when he reached back to steady me through rough patches. My high heels were gone, abandoned in the SUV. Kyle had torn the hem of my ruined dress and wrapped the fabric around my feet to protect them. What started as an elegant gown now looked like something torn apart by survival. "Not much farther," he said, pausing beneath a slanted pine. "The entrance is just over that ridge." I nodded, breathless. We had been climbing continuously for nearly an hour, the incline sharpening as we rose along Black Mountain's flank. The moon overhead felt impossibly large, its silver glare painting the treetops like frost. "You're doing well," Kale said. The approval in his tone was genuine, almost warm. Most wolves would have complained by now. "I've had plenty of practice being uncomfortable," I said. Bitterness crept into the words before I could stop it. Being rejected teaches resilience. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not pity. Kale Draven didn't pity anyone, but something aware, understanding. "Yes," he said quietly, "it does." Before I could ask what he meant, a sound split the night. A distant howl, then another, then three more weaving together in a chilling chorus. These weren't wild wolves. These were Lycan scouts, northern ones. Their howls carried intention, urgency, and coordination. A hunt. Kyle stilled, listening with predatory focus. "Northern scouts," he said darkly. "They found our trail sooner than expected." Cold dread washed through me. "How the pendant is gone. They're scent tracking now." His jaw clenched. "They collected enough of your scent at the wedding. They know exactly who they're hunting." He seized my hand, pulling me into a faster climb. "We need to reach the sanctuary boundary. They can't cross it without permission." We scrambled over rocks and roots, half running, half climbing. My lungs burned, my legs shook, but fear drove me forward. Behind us the forest erupted with movement, brush snapping bodies, sprinting paws, striking earth. "Over there," Kyle barked, pointing ahead. The dense trees began to break apart, revealing a clearing where an ancient stone ring rose from the earth, weathered pillars arranged in a perfect circle beneath the moonlight. "The stone circle," he said, "the sanctuary's outer boundary." And all I could think was, if we didn't reach it in time, the northern scouts would. I could barely make out the ring of towering stones standing like ancient guardians at the edge of the clearing. Beyond them, Black Mountain's peak cut into the sky, its upper slopes washed in silver as the moon crowned the summit. We were less than 50 yards from the boundary when the first wolf exploded out of the forest behind us, huge gray eyes gleaming with that unnatural northern brightness. It snarled a warning that didn't need translation. Kyle shoved me forward. "Run for the stones. Don't stop. No matter what you hear. What about you?" I gasped, stumbling uphill. "I'll hold them off." "Go." The alpha command in his voice hit me like a shockwave, overriding instinct and fear alike. My body obeyed before my mind could catch up. Behind me came the unmistakable sound of bones cracking, reforming Kyle, shifting his human shape, tearing away for something far more dangerous. The snarls that followed told me he'd already collided with the northern wolf, buying me seconds precious, life or death seconds. I ran harder. My wrapped feet were shredded from rocks and thorns, but pain meant nothing now. All that mattered was the circle. 20 yards. 10. The roars behind me multiplied, more wolves smashing through the underbrush. I could hear claws tearing earth, panting breaths closing in. 5 yards from the closest stone, something yanked my ankle. A snag of root, or maybe ill luck, sent me crashing face first into the forest floor. Pain split across my palms and knees, but I barely felt it. Because a presence loomed behind me, I rolled over just in time to see a massive black wolf with a stark white streak across its muzzle, Riven staring down at me. Northern, deadly, and entirely too pleased with itself, not Kyle. A cold shock tore through me. I crab-crawled backward toward the stone, instinct pushing me even as terror tried to freeze my limbs. The wolf stalked after me with slow satisfaction, savoring the hunt, letting me retreat just enough to stretch out its cruelty. My back slammed against the nearest stone, its surface freezing, ancient, impossibly solid. Riven lowered its body, preparing to strike. Then a blast of motion hit it from the side. Kyle. In wolf form, he was enormous, larger than any Lycan I'd ever seen. Midnight black fur swallowed the moonlight, and his eyes burned an unreal green even in his beast form. He planted himself between me and the northern wolf, radiating pure lethal dominance. The two wolves circled only a moment before Riven lunged for Kyle's throat. What followed was too fast for mortal sight. Fury and shadow colliding, teeth and claws slashing bodies, smashing against the forest floor with bone-rattling force. Blood sprayed in the moonlight. I pressed back against the stone, vision blurring as something strange shivered through me. The stone pulsed warm, alive. A vibration crawled through it and straight into my chest, resonating with something buried deep, something I'd never felt before. My hand rose on instinct and touched the stone. The world changed instantly. Colors sharpened to impossible brilliance, sounds separated into layers, wolf breaths, shifting leaves, the hum of power running beneath the earth. Silver webs of energy crisscrossed the clearing, linking each of the stones like veins. And then I saw it. A faint glow beneath my own skin, tracing along my veins like moonlit ink. The bloodline awakens, a voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. The circle recognizes its own. Understanding slammed into me, raw, instinctive, absolute. Keeping my hand on the stone, I pushed myself to my feet and stepped fully into the ring. The moment my foot crossed the boundary, the air shimmered like stepping into a veil of living light. I turned toward the fighting wolves, lifted my free hand, and spoke words I had never learned, but somehow knew with absolute certainty. By moonlight and blood right, I deny you passage. My voice rang out like bells over water, strong, resonant, powerful. This sanctuary rejects your presence. The response was immediate. A pulse of energy erupted from the stones, sweeping over the ground like a shockwave. Riven was hurled backward, thrown across the clearing as if struck by an invisible hammer. He snarled and slammed himself at the boundary again, only to be flung back a second time. Kyle, blood streaking his fur, stepped slowly across the threshold. The northern wolf howled once furious and thwarted before vanishing into the trees. As Kale crossed the circle fully, that strange clarity inside me began to fade, the light dimming. the world settling back into ordinary shape. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing about me would ever be ordinary again. The glowing threads faded, the voice inside my mind went silent, and the world snapped back into something resembling normal. Or whatever counted as normal after everything that had unfolded. My knees suddenly gave out strength, evaporating as the adrenaline and whatever force I had briefly called on drained from my body. I would have hit the ground if Kyle shifted back into his human form and, hastily dressed in clothes pulled from a small pack, hadn't caught me. Easy, he murmured, his arm steady around me. The first activation always takes a toll. What just happened? My voice felt like it came from somewhere far away. You triggered the sanctuary's defenses. There was a hint of awe in his expression as he searched my face. Something only those of royal blood or priestess lineage can do. I saw threads of light, and I heard voices. He nodded, completely unsurprised. The sanctuary's consciousness. The ether recognized you as its own. The implications were too huge, too unreal for my exhausted mind to grasp. If any of this was real, if Kyle was right about my bloodline, then everything I thought I knew about myself had been a lie. We need to get to the inner sanctuary, Kyle said, gently guiding me forward. You need rest, and we're still exposed out here. We moved without speaking through the stone circle and climbed a winding path that seemed to reveal itself as we approached, glowing softly with veins of blue light radiating from crystals embedded in the rock. I was too overwhelmed to form questions, too drained to do anything but walk. Eventually the path opened into a breathtaking sight, an immense structure carved directly into the mountainside. Its architecture fused perfectly with the natural stone. Ancient pillars, etched with wolves and moon sigils, guarded an entrance wide enough for 20 people to walk through at once. Warm golden light spilled from within, a promise of safety. Welcome to the royal sanctuary, Kyle said quietly. Your ancestral home, if I'm right about you. Crossing the threshold, I was wrapped in warmth and the scent of pine and cedar. Wardens stationed inside bowed deeply to Kyle before letting their curious gazes settle on me. Prepare the silver chamber. Kyle ordered one of them, and notify the council that I've returned with a guest of substantial importance. The next few hours blurred together, being led to an opulent suite, attendants tending my cuts. Offering clean clothes, bringing food I barely tasted despite the ache in my stomach. Everything felt unreal, distant, as if it were happening to someone else entirely. It wasn't until much later, standing alone on the balcony of my chamber, staring out over the moonlit forest, that the weight of everything finally hit me. In less than a day I had gone from rejected Omega to something pivotal. In 3 days, under the blood moon, I would either help stop Varric Thorn's rise or fail and watch Kale's kingdom fall. The pendant I'd carried for years was gone, but something deeper had awakened in its place, something ancient, wild, and terrifyingly right. A truth I felt more than understood. I was no longer Emma Winters, the overlooked girl with no pack. I was Lyra Snow, descendant of lunar priestesses, claimed by power older than any crown. And whatever came next, I would face it not as who I had been, but as who I was becoming. Thanks for watching.